Video 55, Math Lesson 8.3, Subtraction of Mixed Numbers. Again, subtracting mixed numbers is not really any different than subtracting with just fractions. And it's really no different than addition of mixed numbers. The problem is that with subtraction, there come some situations that make it a little bit more difficult. Let's take a look. Here's one way to subtract a mixed number from a mixed number. First, subtract the fraction parts of the mixed numbers. If the fractions have unlike denominators, rename them using a common denominator. If necessary, rename the larger mixed number so the fraction part is large enough to subtract from. Second, subtract the whole number parts. Let's take a look at what that means. In our first example here, we need to find 1/4 minus 3 2/3. Now when we look at those fractions, we can see that we do not have a common denominator. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to rewrite the fractions with common denominators. We're going to use 12 as our common denominator. We'll rewrite 5 1/4 as 5 3/12, and 3 2/3 is equivalent to 3 8/12. Okay, so we rewrote the problem with common denominators. Now, the next step would be to subtract. Subtract the numerators. Denominators stay the same. Unfortunately, when we try to subtract the numerators, we have a 3 minus 8. You can't take 8 away from 3. Just like when you're subtracting with regular whole numbers, you have to look at each place, and you're going to have to do some borrowing and trading if you can't subtract. Well, that's what we're up against here. I cannot just flip these around and say that my numerator is 5. It doesn't work that way. I have to do 3 minus 8, and that can't be done. So before I can subtract, I'm going to have to take 5 3/12, and I'm going to have to trade in one of the wholes from the 5 to make my fraction part have a larger numerator. So I need to rename 5 3/12 so that the fraction part is at least as large as 8/12. Remember, we can take 1 from our whole number and rename it as a fraction with the same numerator and denominator. Since we're talking twelfths here, I know that 12/12 is equal to 1. So I can take 1 from my 5 and I can add it over here as 12/12. So if I take 1 from my 5, I've got 4, and I'm going to put that 12/12 together with 3/12. I've got a total of 4 and 15/12, because 12 plus 3 is 15, so that's how many 12s we now have. Now I can subtract, because I can do 15 minus 8 is 7, my denominator is 12. And don't forget to subtract your whole number parts. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 7/12 is as simplified as it can be. It's very important that you understand how to take this and rename it as this. These are equivalent fractions. It's just a different way of naming the same amount. Here's another possible situation that you might come up against. Let's say your problem is to find 5 minus 2 2/3. Well, we have a whole number here, but we don't have a fraction part. Sometimes that's a little bit tricky. When we line them up, it's like we don't have any fraction here to subtract 2/3 from. So again, we're going to have to rename that whole number, and this time we're going to make it a mixed number. Remember, I can take 1 from my 5, 1 whole, and I can rename it as any fraction with the numerator and denominator the same. So since this one is in thirds, I'm going to think thirds. 3/3 is equal to 1. So I can take 1 from the 5 and put 3/3 over here. So 4 and 3/3, it's the same equivalent to 5, it's just a different way of naming it. And now I have a fraction part that I can subtract from. 3 minus 2 is 1. Denominator is 3, so we got 1/3 there. And don't forget to subtract your whole numbers. 4 minus 2 is 2. So our answer is 2 1/3.